Good evening and welcome to this new webinar organized by Biomimicry Switzerland. My name is Sonja Donau-Drums, and on behalf of our association, I'm happy to welcome you all. Also welcome to Tati and Michaela, who will be our technical support behind the scenes. Biomimicry Switzerland is back with the first webinar of this new year. We wish to bring biomimicry, its principles and applications closer to a wider public and raise awareness about this great lens for tackling all different types of challenges we face today, be they technical, social or global. Tonight, we welcome Thiane Shiros. She is one of the female founders of Werewool, who envision a future of high-performance regenerative textiles for a sustainable circular economy built on the foundations of biofabrication and strategic biomimicry. Welcome, Thiane. Before I pass it on to you, a few housekeeping rules. Thiane will lead us through her presentation for the first approximately 20 minutes. Please feel free to post your questions in the chat. Thiane will answer them in due time. The second part of this webinar is devoted to interactions and Q&A. Do not be shy, unmute yourself and go for it. Interactivity is what we are looking for. Thiane, it's time for you to take over and lead us into tonight's webinar. Please take over from here and please feel free to introduce yourself. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I just put this in slideshow mode. Let's see. Can everybody see the screen just fine? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Thiane Shiros. I am a co-founder and the Chief Science Officer at Werewool, as well as a professor at FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. I'm excited to tell you about something that really ignited my imagination several years ago and continues to do so every day. Werewool is an early stage biotech company that engineers biodegradable textile fibers with inherent DNA programmed color and function and performance properties. Werewool started in 2018 in response to the question, how can biomimicry change the future of fashion? And so some context for this question started, was initially proposed as a provocation in the classroom for students to reimagine the future through the lens of biology and design for sustainability. Now, this question at FIT comes against the backdrop of many students and faculty having their weekly class schedules have content like this. For instance, Monday, fibers. Over 60% of the fibers we use today for textiles and other applications are made from petroleum-based feedstocks, especially polyester, huge carbon footprints. Following polyester at almost 25% of our fiber is cotton. Those cotton has huge water demands, land demands, and ecotoxicity due to agrochemicals. Those agrochemicals go back to petroleum. They're all petrochemical based. Okay, Tuesday, dyeing. Textile dyeing is one of the most chemically intensive industries in the planet. It's responsible for 20% of global wastewater. Knitting, add 1% spandex to a garment, renders it completely unrecyclable. Finishing, forever chemicals that are endocrine disrupting, used for waterproofing, for example, have huge toxicities and have been found to permeate the entire global ecosystem in the body of polar bears. Well, that's just manufacture. During use and end of life, the textile industry, especially synthetic fibers, is responsible for 35% of microplastic pollution. So all these properties we want at every stage of a product's life cycle in this linear economy are incompatible with nature. Yet all the aesthetic and performance properties we could ever want in our clothes, and some that we haven't even thought of yet, can be found in nature. Had nature already figured out a solution to the fashion industry's problems? So that brought us back to our original question. Nature's organisms have evolved to produce proteins with amazing functionality. And the DNA sequence that encodes for those proteins can be engineered in a lab to create an entire new world of traits without introducing toxicity or compromising biodegradability. For instance, the wasps have proteins in their saliva that create a natural waterproofing that can potentially replace those toxic PFAs I mentioned in the finishing stage. The discosoma coral has a red fluorescent protein that evolved to provide natural UV protection in a symbiotic relationship with the coral and is an algae, but it also gives this beautiful vivid red color. The Chinese soft-shell turtle, another amazing organism, it has a protein in its eggs that give it antimicrobial properties. So nature has involved such incredible strategies for color and performance. And biotechnology has given us the tools to map those blueprints into sustainable high-performance materials at scale. So what we do at Werewool is follow nature strategies for performance to create low-impact, vibrant, strong, stretchy textile fibers that follow nature's blueprints for performance through protein engineering. What you're seeing here is natural color and fluorescence in our fibers. These are our kind of lab stage before they're dried, very first proof of concept fibers. No dyes, this vivid color and natural fluorescence is absolutely structural. It's without dyes or finishing. So how do we do this? Well, our team starts by identifying a performance property in nature of interest, and then also the DNA sequence that encodes for it. For instance, the hot pink fibers I just showed you in the last slide, that's based on a red fluorescent protein that can be found in coral. But this is just one of over 8 million unique proteins that are known to date, each of which confers an amazing biofunctionality, which can be potentially harnessed to create sustainable performance materials. So this is the concept that ignited Werewool, sparked our imagination, sparked this drive, and this was the birth of Werewool. Can we map nature's blueprints for performance and color and strategically replace all the toxic parts of the fashion industry through biomimicry? And can we do this at scale? And can we do this at a cost that can be a commodity fiber? And this was really a wonderful place for us because this sort of paralysis that people feel with our whole linear economy is so toxic and there's just so many systemic imbalances and injustices. Can we look at it instead of a place of discovery where everything in nature that's here today, after 3.8 billion years of research and development worked? If it's here today, the experiment for sustainable performance worked. And can we learn from that and map that into materials, especially textiles? Okay, so how do we do this? Well, those natural sequences in nature that code for color or stretch or waterproofing, those are our starting point. There's the starting point for engineering these designer proteins that confer this functionality to a fiber. We then modify the DNA code to help that protein have sticky end groups to make it assemble into a fiber. We engineer microbes. We insert the DNA sequence modified into a microbe, which is our kind of microbial protein factory for this property. We're currently at lab scale using about 1 liter scale microbial fermentation to brew these proteins. Then we actually use nature's catalyst enzymes to take these proteins and link them into a fiber. Now, after we do that, we use eco-friendly coagulation baths, and in a process that models industrial wet spinning, but without the toxicity, it's water-based chemistry. We spin this biopolymer mixture into fibers. Now, there's something really cool about this, and really, the whole process is built in the framework of biomimicry. First of all, it's extremely modular. Nature's enzyme is very specific, but very broad. So any protein that has the end groups that most protein has can be linked with this enzyme. However, it's really specific, so we can control the chemistry and not need any other toxic chemicals to do it. What's really special about this is it allows us to follow nature's cycling. Because we can use this enzyme to link our proteins and the tools of biotechnology to help our proteins link to different things, we can use a wide range of biopolymers, both polysaccharides and proteins, that can be sourced from agro-industrial waste streams. So this allows us to close energy and material loops across the most environmentally destructive industries in the world. So the process is super modular. By sourcing bulk plant proteins from waste streams, we close those energy loops. We use eco-friendly coagulation baths. So the entire process, and I really want to pause here because it's not just the biomimicry of form, structural form giving a property, but our entire framework is biomimetic. And there's certain core principles of biomimicry that we follow, and you can really see at work here. One, we build from the bottom up. We build with biology. We use really modular components that can kind of operate as a very clean, functional Lego system. We do chemistry in water. This is called life-friendly chemistry. We build selectively with a small set of ingredients. This is what nature does. We use low-energy processes. We use really readily available materials. We take discarded parts of agro-industrial waste streams and we extract biopolymers from those. And importantly, we use readily available materials and leverage cyclic processes. So the entire framework, not just that amazing function that first ignited this idea, but we've built an entire framework that is biomimetic at its heart. So we can't forget about the end of life, because we talk about manufacturing impacts, but many of the largest impacts are at the end of life for products in a linear economy. So just as these are I want to show you here, these are some pictures of our microbes. This is our microbial fermentation. We engineer proteins. We have bacteria, we feed the bacteria on these petri dishes. Then we take those proteins extracted from those microbes and we combine them into that biopolymer dope, which can be extruded into these fibers. So these colored fibers are inherent color. There's no dyes, there's no pigments. So we cut out that entire stage of the supply chain, as well as the cost and the ecotoxicities associated with them. Importantly, many of the dyes and finishing agents not only introduce toxicity, but that toxicity renders them, it compromises their biodegradability. So something really important to us is, just as microbes are used to build up our materials, we design our materials so that microbes can break them down. Our fibers are designed to be biodegradable by and non-toxic to microbes in naturally occurring soil and marine environments. Our goal is for wearable fibers at the end of their useful life to degrade into building blocks for healthy ecosystems. And there's a critical importance of that, is that healthy marine environments and soil environments have really, really strong carbon sequestration potential. So this process, not only when you return it to the earth as food instead of poison, you actually create building blocks for healthy ecosystems. And it really follows nature's cycling, that the byproducts of one reaction are the building blocks of another. And then they go on to generate and sequester carbon and fertilize soil and marine environments at the end of their useful life. Well, we took this from this kind of beautiful idea of inspiration and into an academic lab, and now we've shifted it into a company. And something that's really important is that biomimicry defines a framework not only for our technology, for our culture. And I personally think this is what's given our team so much resilience in navigating all the things that it takes to transfer technology from a lab into the marketplace. We're still really early stage, but we use a lot of the principles at work in our core team, as well as with our collaborators and partners and just our peers. One really important component in nature that renders an ecosystem resilient is cooperation over competition. Survival of the fittest was never, the biggest and the strongest wins. It's the fittest was the one who was most adaptive, the most resilient, the most diverse. So to that end, we also have no rigid hierarchies. We have a very decentralized model in our kind of culture, and that gives us resilience. Finally, diversity of opinions and perspectives and talents also give us resilience to go from this idea of following nature's blueprints and mapping them into high performance sustainable materials with a circular life cycle. So diversity is really a big part of who we are and what we do. And in fact, Werewool is the brainchild of this amazing, very diverse team with backgrounds from textile development, marketing, bioengineering, biofabrication, material science, chemical physics, and fiber engineering. Our technology is still at lab scale, and we're creating grams of fiber in the lab. Our prototypes that you can see here harness structural color to create the bright pink and blue colors that you see. But this is just one function, and we see this just as a starting point. Our team sees a future where our sneakers, our yoga plants, our yellow rain jackets can have textile performance without plastics and color without water pollution. What we're doing at Werewool is aiming to develop a platform where we can follow nature's blueprints to create not just one kind of fiber, but an array of biodegradable performance textiles with inherent properties, stretch, waterproofing, even color changing, and maybe some properties we've never even seen in a textile before. With textile performance without the toxicity, for a future where textile production is not only not synonymous with environmental impact, but it's compatible with nature and bows its head to the infinite wealth of knowledge it's provided for us. Thank you so much for your time. I hope this is a good starting point for a discussion.
Thank you so much for your inspiring and great talk. You can feel your enthusiasm about the topic and about the company. But when did it all start? How long was it ago from this first idea?
So that first idea was in 2018, and my now partners were then students in a biodesign challenge that I was the faculty lead on. So, we had a section on biomimicry and synthetic biology, and Chui Lian Li, who is our CEO, and Valentina Gomez, who is our CIO, said to me one day, "Hey, Thean, can we do this? Can we take all of these proteins and map them into a fiber?" And I looked at them and paused and thought and said, maybe, maybe. And that was really the beginning of the journey. So we worked really hard at a proof of concept. We took that proof of concept and wrote a small seed grant through the National Science Foundation, got a seed grant. It was enough to sort of gather, enough data to put this together and really have a proof of concept for the technology. And that allowed us to get continued funding and mostly grants. Basically, we're largely grant funded to date, but developing rapidly and growing rapidly. And so that was really the start of it. And it really started as, can we strategically use biology and biomimicry to just strategically swap out all the terrible parts for something really high performance? There's no better performance than nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree. The audience is asking, what are the next steps to make this happen? What help could you need?
We are growing our team. We're always kind of applying for funding and growing our team and building our program. Our next big stage, and we've had a successful first run on industrial wet spinning infrastructure. So taking this now to scale. Our big challenges are, we're taking this to the next level of scaling. Our platform is designed to kind of be a plug and play solution. So when I was showing you how we extrude into those the water-based chemistry baths, that is intentionally built to model industrial wet spinning, which is used for regenerated fibers, rayon, viscose, etc. But again, just swapping out the bad parts with environmentally benign green chemistry, this life-friendly chemistry that's a fundamental biomimicry principle. And then from there, we will really need all the textile tests, right? Does this withstand sweat and wear? And then the next level, after we kind of accomplish enough fiber to make prototypes and a circular knit swatch, people can touch and feel and say, hey, this is a textile. I think a big thing will be all the textile durability requirements.
Mm-hmm. Can you imagine what will be the price look like then? Will it be competitive, do you think?
This is always a challenge for new materials. Polyester is like less than $1 a kilo, and this is a big problem. These things are subsidized, these things are cheap. And we do see our material with our beachhead market, it would be like athletics. You can picture yoga pants, hot pink stretchy yoga pants that are biodegradable and non-toxic. So I think one thing that we have to think about is, you're not going to get to subsidized polyester. But one thing we can think about is some brands are committing to really ambitious sustainability goals. And so are customers. Customers have, market research shows that they're willing to pay a little higher. So we're thinking, a good goal would be sort of on the end of kind of wools and cashmeres, even though it won't perform like a wool, it'd be more of a performance fiber to replace synthetics. So kind of, in the range. And then I think with everything, cost goes down with scale and with incentives. Ultimately, brands have really ambitious sustainability goals, and there's not, and those needs are unmet. There's not a material that meets those needs. So we certainly see this, the goal is for this to be a commodity fiber. And one of our strategies for that is one of the beautiful things about the biomimetic principles is that environmentally beneficial things are also cost beneficial. So using waste streams, using byproducts, using as much as possible organisms that can produce these proteins where the feedstock come from waste streams, where the biopolymers that are the base fiber that are functionalized also come from waste streams. And so this has, improved commercial viability and scalability and circularity all in one.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Nadia is also asking about culture, my biomimetic approach. What did come first, the idea of this product, or do you think this attitude, thinking as a biomimic, led you found the way together?
I think they're inseparable because it was really fundamentally an ethos. It was really an approach to sort of, nature is so beautiful and so high performing, and it's so valuable that you want to protect it. And I think there's a certain humility of it not being, anthropogenic centered, right? If you sort of have this appreciation for nature and the amazing lessons it has to offer, then suddenly you're not the center of the ecosystem. And if you come from if you approach your technology and your collaborations where you're not the center of the species, then I just think it trickles in to all these spaces. And I think we're incredibly lucky that we were recipients of the 2020 Global Change Award from the H&M Foundation, and we found so much inspiration and support from other kind of dreaming innovators, right? That just really thought this is possible. We just have to do it. And that goes into the collaboration over competition. Mm-hmm. So I think cultures reinforce culture. And something really exciting about being in a fashion space for new materials is, fashion creates culture and culture creates change. So if we can sort of really make nature and fashion and entrepreneurship and materials compatible, then I think we can have a culture that's also compatible with nature, which is what really needs to happen to have this radical paradigm shift to a circular economy.
I like this quote, culture creates change, because that's what we need most. Nadia wanted to add something. Nadia, do you want to speak up?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Diane, this is wonderful, especially because it sounds like your company embraced this wholeheartedly, not just in the creation of textiles. I think that's a fundamental aspect of the takeaway from today. There's several Humber College students here that have attended. I told them about this webinar. They're listening keenly. They're fashion design students, and they're the question here is, when you're thinking about taking this into textile creation, do you first need to really understand this life-centered approach that you're mentioning and really wrap your mindset around that? And how did it change your culture in the company? What were the shifts within the organization that you saw as a result of taking this on?
Let's maybe break the question down bit by bit. So as far as, do you need to have this life-centered approach to make a difference? I think it's really a balance. It has to work, and it has to work with the existing supply chain and infrastructure to change the existing supply chain and infrastructure. It needs to be able to be plugged in, because there's so many barriers to this level of disruptive innovation. There's so many challenges that it has to be sort of like a Trojan horse. Like, this has to perform better, be affordable, and also have these sustainability benefits. And I think that's really, really critical. It's like the sustainability aspect is great, but it's not going to change people's mind who control the supply chain and who are, it has to actually meet the performance specifications and the cost specifications, and then great. And it's not that that's my order of priority, but that is sort of the reality of being disruptive and in a disruptive innovation in a material space. So I think, so that's the first part. And I think that I absolutely love, the idea, I guess it was contagious from what Sonia had said, but it is such a place of like directing your ideas, intellect, skill sets, and passion towards something you really believe in. But we have the most amazing team. That has been something that sort of always made me willing to sort of throw myself into this, is because of the commitment and the passion and the diversity of the team. And it is not, we want to see a difference, and that's why we're all doing it. and we believe this can make a difference. And I think this opportunity to chat with a lot of people is part of this changing culture, that there are solutions out there, keep going, create your own solution. Maybe this inspires a different aspect, but there is a community. And so I'm very grateful that nobody had to bend anybody into an ethos. We naturally met and connected and clicked, and our, sparks are always flying intellectually and culturally between us because of that space. As we grow, we're still small, but our newest team members also really are. I mean, that's kind of our criteria. It's like you have to be excited about this idea. Otherwise, the guts of this kind of innovation, you have to be excited and you have to believe in the outcome.
Thank you very much. There is another question going in a completely different way. It's asking, the fashion industry is moving to recycled post-consumer polymers. How do we move away from complex petrochemicals as replacement to monomaterials? Rather than transition, can we leapfrog to bio-based materials, textiles?
Okay, I actually can see this in the chat, so I'll take that.
It's in the chat, yeah.
Okay, so I think my answer, it's funny, the answers are all rooted in biomimicry, but maybe I've so wholeheartedly embraced this outlook that it's my framework for describing things. But I mean, successful systems in nature are locally attuned. There is a huge amount of synthetic textile waste. I am a big proponent of finding a way to turn that into high value chemicals, materials, recycle them. I do not believe that our technique is the one solution. I think we need a diversity of solutions that are locally attuned to the area. So a sustainable raw material in one part of the world may not be sustainable in another part of the world. And I think this is really critical to consider. So monomaterials, I think when you design for new materials, as designers, as fashion designers, design with the end in mind. You have to think about the end at the beginning. So the fewer the components, right? Put in 1% spandex, you're not going to have it be mechanically recycled. It's not going to be biodegradable. Synthetic dyes and finishing agents, even if it's a natural material, your toxicity, it's huge. Toxicities come in, biodegradability is compromised. That said, we have so much textile waste and we have so much synthetic textile waste. The best thing we can do is take materials that exist and find a way to put them back into a circular economy. And so I don't actually see one as better as another. I see them as complementary. I think the performance athletic apparel industry is going to want bright, stretchy clothes. And currently there's no alternative to spandex that exists that's biodegradable and low toxicity, to my knowledge. I know many amazing companies are working on this, and laboratories. So I think that we have to be really, I don't have it. People say, what's your favorite new material? I mean, the one that exists and the one that can be reintegrated. So I hope that answers your question.
Do you think a bioengineering background is necessary to get into the biomimicry market?
Okay, well, if I'm in the biomimicry market, then the answer is no, because I did an undergraduate in art history. I did a master's in physics, PhD in chemical physics, and was working on nanoelectronics before this. So I think the answer is no. But of course it helps. I think a degree in bioengineering is a wonderful, wonderful thing. I do think the problems are so complex and interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary that many different approaches sort of can play a role. Our team is so diverse. We have so many different we have a very, very varied background. And that's really, really critical, because you can't think of all the things at the same time, especially when you have a specific training and a specific perspective. So that diversity as resilience that we apply, the biomimetic principle that we apply, is I think really important. That said, whatever your expertise is, knowing a bit about the other disciplines and how they fit together is really, really valuable.
So just to add on, it wasn't necessary for you to be an expert in the whole chemistry textile industry, but because you had the correct co-founders and you knew a little bit, it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, you just find it's the right team, right? You have the idea, you have the passion, you have to know. I think the most important thing is you have an understanding of what expertise you have and what expertise you need and what expertise you don't have. And that's where you fill in a really good team. and you know, you have to, you know, fill your niche together. And I think that diversity is super important. I can't emphasize it enough.
I think biomimicry is for everyone with a curious mind, because as you said, you can find somebody who knows the things you do not know. So I think biomimicry is for everybody who is interested in, might benefit from it. There is another question about regulations and safety concerns. Since you're using microorganisms, what regulatory approval have you had to go through?
Yeah, well, so one thing that's really important is that there is no microorganisms in our product. We brew microorganisms that make our proteins, and we stop feeding them, and they're terminated in the lab. They never leave the lab. They're simply the microorganisms that we modify do not go out into the world ever. And so we follow the basic biological safety guidelines. There are guidelines, though, however, relevant to microbial fermentation of what kind of things. There's increasing regulations about things that can be used in the textile supply chain. Like I believe one of my partners told me methanol is a big one that's getting regulated. And so, you know, we won't use that approach in our microbial fermentation because there's a number of guidelines. We are planning, once we get to kind of a final composition and we start scaling our fiber, we have a barrage of tests for biodegradability and toxicity to organisms in natural marine environments. So that's really, really important. It's not just that they break down, but that their biodegradation byproducts are not toxic to any of the microorganisms in those environments. Microorganisms are the unsung heroes of biodiversity. They do so much that we don't see. And so life cycle assessment is always really important. We do it internally just to kind of check our protocols. Ultimately, when we have that final composition, we'll have a third party LCA done.
Good. There is one question referring to the interior architecture concept and design and how to solve the efficiency of energy and water waste in this process. It's from Mohammed Abdul Fattah.
So one of the things, because we don't use solvents, we don't have to worry about that expensive and toxic and water intensive solvent recycling and disposal. We use enzymes and water-based chemistry, which really helps us with our water footprint. By using biopolymers derived from waste streams, we don't have, for our plant-based biopolymers, we don't have to think about those agricultural, that water demand, because it's a byproduct, not a co-product. And a big part of our metrics and our milestones is efficiency, so mass efficiency. So like this is a green chemistry principle, is that green chemistry is based on atom efficiency, that every gram of biopolymer that goes in should become a biopolymer, a gram of fiber or a gram of product. And of course, we're not at 100%, but these are our goals. So we think about, this is kind of built into it. And so if one processing strategy makes us, our final fiber composition doesn't weigh the same as the biopolymers we went into it, we know we had some losses, we know our process was not very efficient, and we iterate and refine it to make it more efficient. Did that answer your question?
Mohammed, does this answer your question? Are you still here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited. I'm architect, and I like the interaction and the field of biomimicry in architect, because the biomimicry is a big umbrella of the all field and all specific. Thank you very much for this answering.
Thank you for joining.
There's a last question in the chat. It's the intended life cycle of clothing and fibers. Are you looking to mimic fast fashion and have fibers last a season and then start to degrade, or are you looking to create long-lasting pieces?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think no matter how improved you are over an existing conventional textile, the best way to get, from a life cycle point of view, to have reduce the impact is the amount of times you use it, right? So it's, there's the manufacturing impacts, but that is ultimately going to be normalized by the lifetime of the garment or the textile. So, I mean, you're probably, this audience is probably familiar with the enormous amount of textile waste and how the huge percentage that doesn't actually even get to a consumer. It just goes right to the landfill for production. So but that said, the aim of that is, yes, you want durability, but you don't want products that, like synthetics and plastics, that outlive you, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren for generations and spread toxicity along the way. So it's that they should either be with it after their life cycle, and that should be a significant amount of time so that their impact is reduced by just use, reuse. After you have kind of minimized the environmental impact of manufacturing, further minimize the total impact by wearing it many, many times, at the end of that product's life, it should be regenerated, either recycled, either biodegraded, either broken down to building blocks. Everything should sort of emulate nature cycling. And that should be at the end of a product's life cycle, which, now this is a personal opinion. I don't know what you need for what's a season. I mean, there's 10 a year now. I don't, to me, so no. But I think that's balanced at durability is important for the usable life cycle, but so is ease of disassembly and ease of reintegration. So, you don't need something to last hundreds and thousands of years, or, many beautiful textile arts have lasted that long, and that's fine if you want to preserve it in that way. But I think that there's this misnomer that if you go for a biodegradable material, it's not durable. And that's not true. We are designing our material. I mean, it can be true. Durability and biodegradability are generally a trade-off. The more durable a material it is, I mean, natural rubber is going to take longer to biodegrade than a piece of paper, right? So that's partly true. But you can engineer materials in a way where naturally occurring microorganisms can secrete enzymes which selectively clip those bonds to return them into building blocks. And those microorganisms don't exist they exist in soil and marine environments in a symbiotic system. So they're not going to biodegrade on you. They will be durable for their use, but they can be safely biodegraded in natural environments or reintegrated. And I think that's a really critical point.
Sure.
I also wanted to follow up and say, would the fibers kind of be standardized, like following wool or silk or something untreated, or depending on what it is, could you engineer it to biodegrade faster or slower?
You can. So I think something that is not something we're working on now. This is not the stage of development we're at, and it's not clear that that's what we will do. But it is possible to engineer in linkages that are activated really specifically, or engineer genes that turn on in a certain environment for it to biodegrade. That's all potentially possible with the tools of biotechnology. We are looking to sort of displace synthetic fabrics for performance apparel as much as we can. So those are kind of our benchmarks that we'll be working towards, having the kind of textile certifications that you would need for athletic apparel, performance wear, because that's the most toxic industry. So that's where we think we have the biggest impact.
Thank you.
There is another one from Annelien. Do I pronounce it right? Do you want to ask yourself?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the plan is to sell. Do you plan to, open a Werewool store, or are you looking into collaborations? And then I was second part also wondering if you think this idea can be used in other industries, so working with proteins and everything.
Yeah, I mean, so the first question about we will not be creating Werewool t-shirts probably. The idea is our technology is our technology. So it's sort of like the enabling technology is our product. And so that can be work with different manufacturers, because we really want to offer something at the raw material stage, not the garment stage. So it's not about this t-shirt is biodegradable, but sort of here's a high performance biodegradable raw material fiber. About 60 to 80% of the carbon impacts are at the fiber stage for raw materials. So that's where we think we can really make a big difference. So you can think of a model where we, now that said, I think something critical to our development will be some of these joint development partnerships. So we can actually, at a certain point, once you leave the lab and start scaling, you need to have like the reality of the industry, the market. You always need the reality of the marketplace, but so joint development partnerships in this area of materials innovation is generally really, really valuable and something that is in a plan to start some of these performance apparel companies and do a joint development. And so you may see Werewool fibers in a line, so that you're familiar with, hopefully sooner than later. But again, it's really we want to offer a fundamental raw material fiber without concessions, performance without concessions, human health, environment, social justice, all these things that come with the linear economy.
So for the sake of time, I think we have another question, but then we slowly have to come to an end. Micheli is asking about if you ever used, instead of bacteria or viruses, yeast or plants in the recombinant genetic engineering phase.
So that's an area that's still kind of under development and sort of proprietary still at this stage of our exact process as we figure out what we're doing. But an important thing for any biotechnology in general will be organism design. What's the most efficient organism that can use the lowest impact media to get the biggest yield? So that's always a consideration.
Is there one last question? Or are you happy with this very, very inspiring talk? Already some thank yous in the chat. So if there is, maybe one, no, really cool. So Tian, it was a pleasure having you here. It was such inspiring and vibrant, and I could stay the whole evening talking with you, talking with the audience. It was really, really cool. Thanks for your time and thanks for our invitation.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for all being interested and part of this wave towards circularity. You're appreciated. The community is a beautiful space. So thanks so much.
Thank you. And I have to thank you, all the audience, for all the questions, all the organizers and helpers from Biomimicry Switzerland, Diane, of course, once again, and for your interest. If you wish to support the dissemination of biomimicry, we would be happy to. If you join us in Biomimicry Switzerland, if you have some spare money, if you donate so that we can keep these webinars for free. We are also happy if you fill out the survey form. This really helps us in continuing and improving our webinars from time to time. And before we go, we are looking for new and interesting speakers. If you have something to share with us, with the community, or if you wish that we tackle some specific aspect of biomimicry, please get in touch with the feedback form or email us. We are always looking for new perspective and topics. And we hope to see you again soon in February with the next topic. We will be then, Michaela help me, it will be the 23rd of February and we will be hosting, you will be hosting an architect, isn't it?
Yes, we'll try something new. We will have a breakfast session at 9 a.m. for tapping into the Asia Pacific time zone with a specialist in urban planning and built materials from Singapore, I think. So stay tuned. We will give you the details as soon as we have them. Looking forward to hosting that.
Thanks, Michaela, for jumping in. Yeah, I hope to see you all soon again. Thanks for your time. Have a wonderful evening or day, whatever time zone you're in. Happy to have you here. Thank you.
Happy New Year, everyone. Be well.
Thank you.
Bye.